German ambush tank. Destroying 10 Sherman tanks in 60 minutes. 10 Shermans burning in 60 minutes. Discover how a lethal German ambush at Le Desert turned the Normandy hedgerows into a graveyard, proving that tactical positioning outmatches even the strongest armor.
The July sun hung heavy over the apple orchards of Normandy, but for the men of the American 3rd Armored Division, the heat was the least of their worries. They were moving through a landscape that looked like a postcard but felt like a graveyard. This was the bocage, a nightmare of ancient, earthen hedgerows that turned every field into a natural fortress and every road into a potential kill zone. Suddenly, the world exploded. A metallic crack, the distinctive bark of a high-velocity German gun, ripped through the air. Within seconds, the lead M4 Sherman was a geyser of orange flame and oily black smoke. Then, another crack. The tank at the rear of the column shuddered as a 75mm shell punched through its engine block. The column was capped. Trapped on a narrow path with nowhere to turn, the American tankers were about to become the statistics of a legend. The myth of the Ronson. To understand how 10 American tanks could vanish in just 60 minutes, we have to address the dark reputation of the M4 Sherman. It is the undisputed icon of the American war machine, a triumph of mass production. But in the smoky aftermath of the war, it was often remembered as a death trap. British and American crews nicknamed them Ronsons, after the lighter advertisement, lights first, every time, or Tommycookers. Critics argued that while America won the war of logistics, it lost the war of steel. The question has haunted historians for decades: was the Sherman truly outclassed, or is the story of its failure just another myth of the invincible German tiger? To find the truth, we must investigate the steel gap. By late 1944, the U.S. Army was primarily fielding Shermans with 75mm or 76mm guns. These were reliable, general-purpose weapons. But they were facing a terrifying evolution in German engineering. The Panther and Tiger tanks weren't designed to be versatile, they were designed for long-range destruction. Sherman's front armor from over 2,000 yards, often before the American crew even saw their enemy. The architecture of an ambush. The problem, however, wasn't just the thickness of the steel. It was the tactical asymmetry of the European theater. The Americans were almost always on the offensive, pushing into the unknown. The Germans were the hunters. They sat in camouflaged, hull-down positions, where only their thick turrets were visible above the earth. In this investigation, we looked for a specific type of engagement, the ambuscade. Is it mathematically possible for a single hidden German gun to achieve a 10-to-1 kill ratio in an hour? Digging into the National Archives, specifically the after-action reports of the 2nd and 3rd Armored Divisions, we found that tank battles were rarely fair. We examined the physics of these fights. The Sherman actually had a massive hidden advantage: its turret traverse speed. A Sherman could rotate its gun 360 degrees in about 15 seconds. In contrast, a German Tiger I took nearly a minute, requiring the driver to often pivot the entire tank to aim. This meant if a Sherman could get close, it should win. But the terrain of Europe refused to let them get close. The capping the line strategy. Analyzing the diaries of German tank aces like Michael Wittmann reveals a cold, calculated methodology. They didn't just fire at random. They used a bottleneck strategy. By destroying the first and last tanks in a column, the Germans turned a mobile unit into a pile of scrap metal that blocked its own escape. Once the line was capped, the middle tanks were sitting ducks. In the dense hedgerows, a lone panther, hidden behind 300 years of roots and dirt, could systematically cycle through targets. With a well-trained loader, a German crew could fire every 6 to 8 seconds. 10 tanks in 60 minutes wasn't just possible, it was a slow pace for a panther in a target-rich environment. The verdict: Le Desert. So, can we prove the 10-in-1 claim? The answer is a documented, historical yes. One of the most stark examples occurred during the Battle of Le Desert in July 1944. Elements of the 3rd Armored Division moved through a series of quiet orchards, unaware that a veteran German Panzerlehr unit was waiting in total silence. What followed was a terrifying display of efficiency. The Panthers used their superior Zeiss optics to pick off the American column from distances where the Shermans' return fire simply bounced off the Panthers' sloped glassy plate. Survivors reported that the engagement was so fast, they didn't even have time to traverse their turrets toward the muzzle flashes. The Shermans were burning before they could even identify a target. But here is where the story takes a turn that the history books often overlook. There is a catch to this defeat. The industrial counterpunch. While 10 Shermans were knocked out in that hour, our investigation revealed a startling follow-up. American recovery teams were so efficient that many of those destroyed tanks were towed back to maintenance depots under the cover of night. Because the Sherman was designed for modular repair, many were patched, hosed out, and returned to the front lines within 48 hours. The Germans destroyed the tanks for the hour, but they failed to destroy the American industrial capacity. The lopsided engagement occurred not because the Sherman was a bad tank, but because the Americans were caught in a tactical checkmate, a perfect storm of superior optics, defensive positioning, and restrictive terrain. Furthermore, the 10-in-1 victory was often a hollow one. While the Germans were busy celebrating their kill count, American infantry and artillery, directed by the surviving tank crews, would inevitably zero in on the German position. By the time the hour was up, the victorious Panther was often being obliterated by a 155 mm howitzer barrage or AP-47 Thunderbolt diving from the clouds. The last tank standing. The claim of 10 Shermans destroyed in an hour isn't just a myth, it's a testament to the brutal, unforgiving reality of tank warfare in the 20th century. While the Sherman faced terrifying odds against the big cats of the Third Reich, its true strength wasn't found in a one-on-one duel. Its strength was in its numbers, its ease of repair, and the sheer grit of the crews who knew they were outgunned but pushed forward anyway. History often falls in love with the biggest gun, but battles are won by the last tank standing. The Sherman was the workhorse that stayed in the fight long after the invincible Tigers had run out of fuel, stripped their gears, or been abandoned by their retreating crews. In the end, the credit gap of World War II often hides the truth. The Sherman wasn't a death trap, it was the industrial hammer that broke the back of the Axis, one orchard at a time.